This week, I encountered some research by Harvard psychologist Stuart Ablon, and it made me start thinking about the question, how would we approach our teaching differently if we assumed that kids will do well if they can? I think oftentimes our assumption as teachers or parents is that we assume that kids do well if they want to. And if that's the assumption that we're working on, we're going to try to make kids want to with rewards and with consequences. You're going to try to use power and control to motivate them or to make them want to behave better. That sends the message to the kid that the problem is we actually don't think you're trying hard enough. But what if what's standing in the way is actually not a lack of motivation? And instead, if we assume that kids will do well if they can, then you understand that it's not the kids lack the will to do better, it's that they lack the skills to do better. And these would be referring to thinking skills like problem solving, flexibility, frustration, tolerance, executive functioning, a whole variety of different thinking skills and emotional regulation skills. And if we think about it this way, if we assume that kids will do well if they can, instead of being in a position as a teacher or parent of judging that kid's lack of willpower, or maybe it's not a kid, maybe it's another person, because in general, maybe people will do well if they can. And instead of judging their lack of willpower, we're instead putting ourselves in a position of collaboration with that student. We're thinking about how we can help them problem solve. Which skills are they missing? Because if the student could do well if they can, that means that they're missing the skills to do well, and we can teach them those skills as their teacher. We can start thinking about what skills they're missing and how we can help them to build those skills. I'm Nina Parrish. I'm a licensed special education teacher and school counselor. I'm the founder of Parrish Learning Zone, an educational services center in Northern Virginia, and the author of The Independent Learner. As a tutor and teacher, I know that many kids who are struggling with behavior or struggling academically are actually more motivated than anyone else to do better because they don't want to continue to feel badly about themselves. They want to do better. They want to be more successful. What they lack is the skills to be able to do better. If they knew how to do better, they would. This is where the teacher comes in. An effective teacher is able to notice those skill gaps and have the instructional knowledge to create a plan with the student to be able to fill those skill gaps in. For example, I worked with students with learning disabilities, and I often tutored students with learning disabilities in reading, or it may be referred to as dyslexia. And these students with dyslexia or with learning disabilities in reading often internalize the message from repeated school failure. They internalize the incorrect message that they're lazy or that they're just not that smart, when really they're trying harder than a lot of other kids to learn to read. I talk to parents in my position as a teacher and as a tutor all the time who have kids who are struggling in reading and or struggling in school or struggling with behavior. But right now I'm referring to talking to parents who have kids who are struggling in reading, and the feedback that they receive often at parent-teacher conferences is to do extra practice at home, to practice more, to read together, to do standardized test practice where they're reading a passage and practicing answering the questions, to have the child practice more at home using computerized programs. These kids are often also receiving not just the regular instruction in reading or language arts class, but also they're receiving additional pull-out supplemental instruction during the school day. And despite doing much more practice than the average student, they're not seeing results. And that's because it's not a will issue, it's a skill issue. It's a skill issue, not a will issue. What's lacking is direct, systematic, multisensory instruction in the skills needed to become a successful reader. When they're taught in a manner that's consistent, they can learn to read. It's not that they're not motivated, and it's not that they're not trying hard enough. It's often that the skills that are being taught are not resulting in improved reading skills. And when a correct match is made between research-based instruction and student needs, performance improves. The same can be said for any child who's struggling. What if they're trying, but just simply lack the skills that they need to succeed? Practice without the proper skills or technique is going to be a waste of time. The student will be trying hard, but they won't improve. At this point, students often falsely attribute this to their negative personal characteristics, like just not being good at a particular subject, or not being that smart, or, they just are lazy, or they don't have the willpower. But those are usually false attributions. But if teachers or parents also attribute the student's struggle to a lack of trying, then the student will feel judged and inadequate, and they'll start to be discouraged. They might shut down. Instead, what is needed is what psychologist Erik Erikson referred to as deliberate practice. Deliberate practice is practice aimed at refining and improving specific skills that's oriented towards a goal. If instead of treating students who are struggling like they have an issue with their will and with their motivation, we address the underlying skill issue, then we're forming a collaboration with students where we're listening to them and we're understanding the skills that they may be struggling with. And this will cause students to feel seen, heard, and supported. They feel understood and like they have the opportunity to work as a team with their teacher and the ability to increase their own skill level. This gives them agency because their actions and the steps that they take, they can see that that has an impact on increasing their skills and working towards their goals.